Hey folks, it's Greg and Janet with Strange RV Tours. Today we're in Irving, Texas, and we're going to check out the home of Buell Wesley Frazier, the man that drove Lee Harvey Oswald to work the morning of the JFK assassination. Most people know him as Buell, but his name is actually pronounced Buell. So, before we get started, I'll show you this house right here. This was the home of Ruth Paine. This is where Marina Oswald was staying when Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina were separated. And Lee would stay here on the weekends and then go back to his boarding house during the weekdays when he was working at the Texas School Book Depository. Now, the reason I'm showing you this home is because Buell's home is only about 200 feet away from here. And that kind of plays into the story we're going to tell today. So let me show you where Buell's home is. This home right here on the corner was where Buell was living. Alright guys, we're standing at 2439 5th Street in Irving, Texas, and this was the home that Buell Wesley Frazier was staying in with his sister and her husband and their 3 kids. He was sleeping on the sofa here at the time. In 1963, Buell Frazier was 19 years old and worked at the Texas School Book Depository. He went to work there in September, which was just a little over a month, maybe 6 weeks before Lee Harvey Oswald went to work there. Now, when Lee Harvey Oswald was hired, what actually happened was that Buell Frazier's sister knew Ruth Paine and let Ruth Paine know that they were looking for help at the Texas School Book Depository. So Ruth Paine told Lee Harvey Oswald about it. He went down there and got the job. Now, Buell's supervisor gave him the job of teaching Lee Harvey Oswald how to be an order filler. He told him, he said, I want you to teach Lee Harvey Oswald to be as good an order filler as you are. Now usually, after they became acquaintances, Buell and Lee Harvey Oswald, well, Buell would give Lee Harvey Oswald a ride every Friday afternoon after work to Ruth Paine's house where Marina was staying, and Lee Harvey Oswald would stay there for the weekend. And then Monday morning, Buell would give Lee Harvey Oswald a ride back to work. And then during the weekdays, Lee Harvey would stay in his rooming house.
Now what's cool is that the kids love Lee. They called him Mr. Lee, and he would come and play with them on the weekends. They really loved him.
Now, on the day of the assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald arrived here on a Thursday morning instead of the normal Monday morning to be taken to work. And he arrived extra early. When he arrived, Buell was still eating breakfast. Buell didn't even know he had arrived, but there's a window right over here on the side of the house that is actually a window to the kitchen. It's right over here behind this smoker. I'm sorry, we got a dog barking, but it's right over here behind this smoker. And Buell's sister saw Lee outside of that window looking inside, and she said he was carrying a white, or not white, but a brown paper package or bag. She didn't know who it was, but Buell informed her, oh, that's my co-worker, I'm supposed to drive him to work. So Buell got up from the table and went over to talk to Lee, invited him in for coffee if he wanted, but Lee said, no, I'm sure you won't be very long, so I'll just wait out here outside. So when Buell finished his breakfast, brushed his teeth, came out to take Lee to work that morning, there used to be a little carport that sat right over here on the far edge of the garage, and Buell would park on that side. So he walked out to his car. Lee met him at the car. It was a 1954 Chevy, And as they were getting in, Buell noticed that there was a package in the back seat. So he asked Lee, "What's in the package?" And Lee said it was curtain rods. That he said, "Don't you remember I told you that Marina had made me some curtains and I was going to come out here to pick them up, and these are the curtain rods." So anyways, Buell didn't think anything about it. He went ahead and drove Lee into work that morning. When they got out of the car, about 300 yards from the Texas School Book Depository in the parking lot, Lee got his package out of the back seat and was getting ready to leave and walk. Well, Buell told Lee that he needed to stay there for a minute or two to charge the battery in the car to make sure that it would start when they got off work. So Lee ended up walking and maybe getting 50 yards ahead of Buell at the time while Buell was doing that. And Buell said he could see Lee Harvey Oswald, when he was walking away, had the package that was supposed to be 2 feet to 27 inches long. He had it cupped inside of the palm of his hand and underneath his armpit as he walked away.
Kind of like this. Like
which,
this, right? No?
yeah, which there's no way that Lee could have put that. If it was 27 inches long, there's no way he could have fit it underneath his armpit and into his hand. I couldn't do that, and I'm much taller than Lee was. Now, when Lee Harvey Oswald arrived at the Texas School Book Depository that morning, he came in the back way through the dock area, which was his normal way of going to work. And a man named Jack Doherty saw him arrive and stated that when he saw Lee Harvey Oswald walking into the building, he had nothing in his hands. He did not have a brown bag or package. Now, Buell never believed that Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy or that he had a gun inside this package. He actually said that Lee Harvey Oswald was a very hard worker, he's very intelligent, and he was a good person. Another unusual aspect of this package was the package that the detectives showed outside of the Texas School Book Depository and said they had found inside that they thought contained the gun. That package had actually been made with wrapping paper, with packing paper from inside the School Book Depository, and you could tell that because the tape that was used on that package had little notches in the sides of it, and that was the type of dry tape that they would use, and they had a roller that they would roll this tape through to get it underwater to wet the paper, and it would create those little notches on the tape. So the package that Buell said that he saw that Lee Harvey Oswald had brought with him was actually made away from the Texas School Book Depository. It wasn't the same bag, and it was a much smaller bag than the one that the police officers were showing. So Buell was taken to the police station and put through 12 hours of questioning. At one point, they told him that he had been named as a co-conspirator to Lee Harvey Oswald, and Oswald had not been charged for the killing of the president yet. Now, Chief Fritz of the Dallas Police Department actually brought a confession into the office where they were questioning Buell Frazier and demanded that he sign a confession admitting that he was part of this murder, which Buell refused to do. And after questioning him for 12 hours, they basically let him go back home as a person of interest. But on his way back home, they changed their mind, picked him up again, brought him back to the police station, and had him take a lie detector test, and Buell passed the lie detector test with flying colors. Later, he was pressured by the Warren Commission to change his story and the length of the bag that he saw that day in Lee's possession, but he refused. He's never wavered on his story. Now, Buell, in a autobiography that was recently published, states that when he was leaving the Texas School Book Depository, he noticed a white man wearing a white crew-cut shirt who looked like military with a rifle. Now, Buell followed this man and saw him put the gun in his trunk and drive off. Conspiracy theorists are saying that it's actually possible that Lee Harvey didn't ever have a paper bag. And that, is it possible that when Buell was being questioned, that the police talked him into agreeing that there may have been a paper bag brought to work that morning? We don't know. We have no idea. But that is one theory floating around, that the paper bag never actually existed, and the only reason that it was ever brought into play was because the detectives needed some way of showing how Lee could have brought a gun into the school book depository that morning. Now, a few interesting things about the sniper's nest in the school book depository. The boxes that held books inside that school book depository weighed about 50 pounds each, and there's 24 of them that made this so-called sniper's nest. So Lee would have had to have had enough time to build that sniper's nest before taking the shot. And the theory is that if he brought the gun into the school book depository in the bag, that it had to be dismantled inside the bag. Now, even dismantled, the gun was going to be too big to fit in the bag that Buell saw. But the problem with that theory is that Lee did not have the tools with him to put the rifle back together. So the detectives, or the commission, came up saying that they think that he put the gun back together using a nickel or a dime to screw the gun back together. And the sniper's nest, inside the sniper's nest, they found a paper bag lunch, chicken bones, and a Dr. Pepper can. And so Walter Cronkite, when he heard that, went on the news saying that the sniper had apparently eaten lunch in the sniper's nest before taking the shots at President Kennedy. That wasn't in fact true. There was a gentleman, a black gentleman, that worked at the school book depository by the name of Bonnie Ray Williams, who it turned out had actually eaten lunch in front of that window. And that's the reason the two boxes were stacked on top of each other, that people were saying was used to steady the gun. He actually put those two boxes there so he could eat his lunch on top of them. And the sniper's nest wasn't really a sniper's nest. It was on the 6th floor of the school book depository. They were redoing the floors, and the construction workers had pushed all of the boxes over, a large amount of boxes over to that corner to get them out of the way so they had access to the floor. And that's the reason the boxes were supposedly stacked over there. Also, there's 3 different versions of the photos that were taken of the sniper's nest that day, each one slightly different. So it looks like somebody was moving boxes to make the photographs appear better. We don't know exactly what happened there either. I'll take you down over here and show you once again, right behind this smoker right here was where Buell's sister looked out the window and saw Lee Harvey Oswald approaching. And then right behind this wood gate here, which wasn't here back in 1963, that was open. Buell would park his car right alongside of the building right over here. He would back his car into that location, so that's where his car was parked the morning that Oswald came over for a ride. I've seen 4 or 5 interviews with Buell, and Buell comes off to me as being very honest. He's carrying a major burden when he talks about the assassination. You can tell that it's emotional for him, but I tend to believe his story. I tend to believe that he was just giving Oswald a ride to and from work.
Yeah, they didn't hang out or anything. People say, oh, they saw him at the donut shop and all that. He denies. He says they're all false. They're all false. They didn't hang out together. He brought them back and forth because it's convenient. You know, he wanted Oswald to spend family time with his wife and kids, and apparently on Fridays, Buell's nieces look forward for Lee to come out here every Friday because he'd be outside playing with them in the front yard, you know. and they call him Mr. Lee, and play and have a good time. And he was a very kind and gentle guy that loved to play with the kids. That's what I keep hearing that.
We're gonna head over to Dealey Plaza, over to the Texas School Book Depository, because we have a little bit more to tell you about Buell. All right, gang, we are at the Texas School Book Depository right here, and this was the entrance to the School Book Depository. And on the day of the shooting, the head boss man here at the School Depository let all the employees loose at noon so that they could take the time off to watch the motorcade, and then afterwards they'd go back to work. Now, Buell Wesley Frazier was standing right about where I am now, where these doors are. So he had a limited view as to how far he could see right and left. Now, Billy Lovelady was also standing out here, and Billy was standing behind Buell at the time, and when Buell would turn around, he'd say that Billy was a little bit shorter than him, and so he couldn't see very well. He was like looking through people's arms and trying to get a view of, you know, where the president was going to be. And so Buell told him, he said, "Billy, why don't you walk right over here down to one of these lower steps, because there's nobody standing in front of you right there. You'll be able to see and have a good view of the president." So Billy replied, "Well, thank you. I think I'll do that." So he went down right over here, and there's a photo taken from the grassy area in the center of Dealey Plaza here, facing this way, and you can see over the presidential limousine, you can see Billy Lovelady standing right here, and it kind of looks like he's pushing against the wall. And he looks very similar to Lee Harvey Oswald. So he was mistaken for Lee Harvey Oswald for quite a time, until they were able to track him down. And he said, "No, that's me standing there. That's not Lee Harvey Oswald." Now, it's also rumored that Lee Harvey Oswald was standing or came out of the door at this location, but I don't think that that's true. So Buell is standing up here watching the motorcade. All he can see is the president coming down this street and then turning left, and by the time the first shot's fired, the limousine is out of view. He can't see it. But Buell said that I guess he probably came right down over to this section, and he did see Lee Harvey Oswald that day. After the assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald was said to leave the back of the building where the loading docks are, and then he walked down the side of the building right here, crossed over Houston Street, and headed this direction here, which would be east on Elm. And Buell said that he saw him heading down that direction, got about halfway to the next light, or the next street, and somebody next to Buell asked him a question. So he turned around to talk to him for a second. When he turned back around, Oswald had vanished. So he's not sure where he went from that point. I don't think that Buell had anything to do with any of the conspiracy theories. I think that he was just a guy trying to help somebody out, bringing him to work and from work. So anyhow, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, the subscribe button. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Strange RV tours will take you places with Greg and Janet's smiling faces. You might see a crazy flavored soda review, or some tips to fix your RV too. So come along, won't you join us, friend, as we discover what's around the bend. Just sit right back in your easy chair. Strange RV Tours is on the air. Strange RV Tours is on the air.